you ever woken up and just felt miserable? Like, I don't know how I'm even gonna get out of bed today. I just feel like have you ever felt like that? Just be glad, I guess, that you didn't have what happened to Gregor Samsa from the Metamorphosis happen to you, because he woke up feeling like that, and he had a few too many legs and a hard exoskeleton and was transformed into a giant beetle. I first read The Metamorphosis in college, and to be honest, I didn't really care for it at the time. It was assigned for class, I had other things that I would rather do, other things that I would rather read, and it was creepy and weird and but I revisited it recently, mainly because I've been traveling a little bit and I spent some time in Prague, which is where Kafka lived, and so it felt like the right time to read it again. I had a very different impression this time. I actually really liked it. One thing that I noticed is it was shorter than I remembered. I remembered a novel, but it's actually a novella. It's less than 100 pages, and the audiobook that I listened to was about 2 hours. So it was a very quick read, if you consider audiobooks reading, which personally I do. And regardless if it had been in print, it also would have been a very quick read that way. A couple of things that I took away from it this time. First of all, the sister. I have a lot to say about Gregor's sister, Greta. She's the one who is mostly responsible for taking care of him when he transforms into the giant insect. It seems to be her choice. She wants to do this, she volunteers for it. However, I think it's very telling that it's his sister who's tasked with this, because it is the sort of thing that typically a woman, a female relative, would be expected to do. Greta's goal in life was not, in fact, to take care of her big brother who was transformed into an insect. She wanted to study music at the conservatory, and that does not end up happening. Gregor was saving up for it, but, once he becomes a giant insect, then that's all bets are off, and yeah, no. I think this is important because Greta, the sister, goes from being the kindest and most compassionate person in the book to the coldest and cruelest by the end. And seeing that her dreams, even though she didn't really think that they could come true, were very much disrupted by this, and that this isn't the life that she saw for herself, it kind of helps you understand. Obviously, there's not really a justification for her actions towards the end, where she's just like, it's got to go, it's not him. We've been fooling ourselves into thinking that it's him, but it couldn't possibly be. And she just wants them to get rid of the insect that her brother has turned into, knowing that it is him and that she knew perfectly well it was him up until that point. There's no excuse for that, but I think the fact that she had these dreams beforehand that are just absolutely brushed to the wayside, and that she finds herself in a very different life than she had wanted, and being required to do this thing that she finds to be unpleasant, taking care of the giant insect. I think you do kind of understand where she's coming from, even though, yeah, she ends up being pretty cold-hearted by the end. Which is a real contrast with her behavior in the beginning, where she's the one who goes out of her way to bring him food and to clean his room, and not just to bring him food even, but like to lay out different kinds of food in front of him to see what he likes to eat, and to be concerned with whether he is eating and how much he's eating. In a way, the experience changes her as well. It changes the whole family, really. Their whole world is shaken overnight, and they all have to deal with the change just as much as he does. Gregor had been the one financially supporting his family. He had been the sole breadwinner. Not only was he using his salary as a traveling salesman to provide for his parents and sister, he also was paying off his father's debts from, I think it's implied, like a company that his father owned that went bankrupt. In any case, the father owes a lot of money, and because of that, Gregor is working in a job that he hates, and he's not really able to quit and find one that he might like better. So he's giving everything for his family. His paycheck, his choice of job. He lives to provide for them up until he transforms into this monstrous insect. However, in the end, it turns out they don't really need him to do that. First of all, they have savings that he wasn't aware of. The father did not, in fact, lose everything, and has a little bit of money to tide the family over while they adjust their plans and finances. And secondly, everyone in the family is able to go get a job themselves. The father gets a job, the mother gets a job, and the sister is in school still at the beginning, but she eventually gets a job as well. And by the end, it turns out they actually don't dislike these jobs. They're perfectly satisfied with them. It just kind of makes you think, like, why could they not all, aside from the sister who needed to finish high school first, why could the rest of them not all be contributing to paying off the family's debts? Why did it have to be just him working to provide for them and to pay off those debts on his own from the beginning? It feels so tragic because he was sacrificing so much to take care of them, regardless of the fact that they proved later on they could have done it for themselves or at least shared the burden. And yet, when he needs them, they're not there for him. They barely tolerate his presence in their home once he wakes up transformed, and they treat him very coldly. Particularly the father, because it's his debt that Gregor was paying off, and he's the one who's the most immediately hostile towards what Gregor has become. Now, granted, I can't imagine it's an easy experience to wake up and a loved one is suddenly transformed into this inhuman thing. However, the professor for the class where I had to read this, her take on it was that it was a metaphor for terminal illness, and honestly, I can kind of see it. He wakes up one day, he's been the provider for his family, but he's no longer able to do that. His body is not right. He's not able to get out of bed at first. He needs to be taken care of. I can see where that sort of metaphorical interpretation would come from, so in some ways it's not that far removed from reality. However, it also feels like a commentary on family dynamics and valuing someone in your family not for themselves as a person, but only for what they can provide to you. In Gregor's case, the money that he provides from his job. It seems like the moment that that stops coming, his family stops caring about him. And Greta is kind of the same, actually. It's said that her parents kind of saw her as a little bit useless before, but once she starts taking care of Gregor in his monstrous form, then all of a sudden she's very useful and they're very pleased with her. So it seems like in both cases, the children in this family are not really valued for themselves, but only for their usefulness. The ending to me is very painful because it's like you've been following him all along. You know how much he gave up for his family, how much he cared about them, and how they've treated him since his affliction began. And to see them so happy, to find out that he's gone, that he's dead, it's just like, they're not even thinking about the son that they've lost. I mean, it seems like Greta and the mother cried for a little bit, but then they're just all going for a ride in the countryside, and they're thinking about finding her a husband, the daughter. They've moved on so quickly, and it just feels, it's heartbreaking. Anyway, I very much appreciated this book this time around. I thought that it was very moving and very thought-provoking, and it's still a very weird premise, and the idea of a giant bug is still kind of icky, but, you know, I really enjoyed it. Or, enjoyed might not be the right word. I really appreciated it. I feel like I got a lot out of it this time around, more so than when I read it for school. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you liked it and you want to see more from me, be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.